Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever really stopped to think about it? How does something so seemingly simple, like a collection of sounds, become so profoundly complex, so deeply meaningful, so utterly music?
It's a great question.
Today, we're embarking on a fascinating deep dive into that very thing. What exactly is music, and what truly defines a song? We've got this fantastic stack of reflections and notes here, and our mission really is to unpack the layers: sound, intent, cultural context.
Yeah, give you a shortcut to getting your head around it.
Exactly. With plenty of surprising facts and hopefully a few genuine aha moments for you along the way.
It's a journey that touches everyone, isn't it? From the most dedicated audiophile to someone just, humming a tune in the shower. We're going to explore what music is, what it can be, and maybe why it holds such incredible power over us.
Okay, let's dive in then. Our usual starting point for defining music often feels, well, deceptively simple. It's organized sound.
Right. That's the textbook beginning.
But when you hear organized, you might picture neat melodies or like strict rhythms. The thing is, organized doesn't necessarily mean clean or structured in that very traditional way, does it?
Not at all. And actually, that's where it gets really interesting. Think about a heartbeat, or a wail of grief, even a rhythmic chant, or maybe a glitchy synth sound.
Okay.
The insights we've gathered point out that these can all be music if they're arranged or, and this is important, perceived with intention. It doesn't need lyrics or a traditional melody or even harmony necessarily.
So like John Cage's famous piece, The Silent One?
Exactly, 4'3". He showed us that even silence, when you frame it with intention, when it's received as a sonic event, it transforms into music. So the definition isn't just about what sound is, but how it's presented and, crucially, how it's received by you, the listener.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective. So, okay, when we talk about what music can be, it stretches way beyond just notes on a page or instruments in an orchestra.
Absolutely. Far beyond. Music can be, well, profoundly emotionally evocative. It has this incredible power, doesn't it? To make us cry, stir nostalgia, ignite rebellion, or soothe grief, all without a single word being spoken sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yet at the same time, it can be mathematically precise. You can break it down into exact ratios and algorithms, time signatures, frequencies, all that.
Two sides of the same coin, almost.
Kind of. And beyond that, music is always a cultural expression. It's like a mirror reflecting identity, history, belief systems, even resistance. It's never created in a vacuum,
And it's not just for passive listening, is it? It's something you really experience.
Exactly. It's about feeling it physically in your body, sharing that feeling in a crowd at a gig, attaching it so deeply to memories.
Totally.
Music is incredibly versatile, too. Think about it. Ritual, communication, meditation, just pure play, protests, even as a form of currency sometimes, or just sheer delightful chaos. And you can make it with anything from a grand piano to like a pencil tapping on a desk or sophisticated software.
So, if music can be all these things, are there any limits? What can't music be? Are there boundaries it just can't cross?
That's a good question. There are boundaries, but they tend to be more philosophical. For instance, music truly can't be meaningless if someone somewhere assigns it meaning.
Right, if it means something to someone.
Yeah, however, pure noise, maybe? Without any intent from a creator or reception from a listener, it might just stay noise. It also can't really escape time, because music is time, fundamentally. It unfolds, it decays, it returns. Completely unlike, say, a static painting you can just stare at.
That's true, it moves.
And it can't bypass context. The same note, the exact same pitch, played in a war zone means something entirely different than that same note played in a nursery. Music always exists somewhere, in a specific moment and place.
And what about trying to capture its essence? Can we ever fully bottle it?
Well, our sources suggest probably not. You can record it, analyze it, transcribe it note for note, but you can't trap its essence, that elusive quality.
That magic bit.
Exactly. You might never be able to fully explain why one particular chord progression hits you just right, or why a specific beat drop makes your chest swell. That unquantifiable magic is precisely what gives it such immense power.
So, if we're putting it in a nutshell, music is this incredible, fluid dance between structure and emotion. It's art born of air, a mirror to the ineffable.
Nicely put. And it proves beautifully that meaning doesn't need to speak to be heard.
And this power isn't new, it's ancient. What's fascinating here, looking at the notes, is how far back its roots go. Like, music likely predates structured language as we know it.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Stretching back to early humans, maybe even pre-human species, as this fundamental form of expression, social bonding, emotional communication.
So singing probably came first, even before words had fixed meanings. Is that the idea?
That's the prevailing theory, yeah. Humming, chanting, maybe primal tonal vocalizations. They might have been used to soothe infants or signal danger across distances or build trust within a group.
Like a shared emotional language.
Sort of. These early sounds kind of blurred the line between music, speech, and emotion, using melody, essentially, as a precursor to structured language. And while lots of animals vocalize rhythmically, birds, whales, primates, it seems only humans intentionally shaped these sounds for beauty, for ritual, and to convey deeper meaning.
And the first instruments, I mean, you'd imagine something simple like banging on a log came before anything complex, right?
You're absolutely right. Drums and percussion probably came even earlier than other instruments. Striking objects like logs, rocks, maybe stretched skins. It doesn't require complex tools. You just need a stick or your hands.
Makes sense.
But what's truly remarkable is the oldest known musical instrument we've actually found. It's a flute, crafted from a vulture bone,
Wow. How old?
dated to about 40,000 to 60,000 years ago, found in Germany. Think about that for a second. Someone, tens of thousands of years ago, meticulously shaped bone to make music.
Incredible.
Instruments evolved from whatever was available, right? Bones, wood, skins, later metals. And they weren't just for fun. They served vital, cultural, spiritual, even survival functions, unifying tribes in rituals, communicating across distances, mourning the dead.
So when did it start to become more formalized? When did people begin writing it down, codifying it?
It seems music began to be codified as writing systems and early civilizations developed. Ancient cultures like Mesopotamia and Egypt, you're talking 3000 BCE and onwards, they had dedicated musicians, established scales, even notated hymns.
They wrote music down back then.
Yeah. The oldest surviving complete musical work we know of is the Hurrian Hymn number 6 from ancient Ugarit, modern-day Syria. It dates back to around 1400 BCE, written in cuneiform script on clay tablets.
Amazing. And the Greeks really laid the groundwork for our modern music theory, didn't they? People like Pythagoras.
They certainly did. Ancient Greek philosophers like Pythagoras were instrumental, discovering those mathematical relationships between pitch and string length, absolutely foundational for Western music theory. And following that, you see key developments, establishing scales and modes, the evolution of notation from these early kind of symbolic markings called neumes in medieval Europe.
Which just gave a hint of the melody.
Exactly, not precise notes, all the way to the much more precise modern Western notation we use today. And harmony, combining different notes played together, that developed gradually in Europe, Middle Ages, Renaissance mainly. Before that, music was largely melodic, mostly single line.
Monophonic.
Right. And instruments became more specialized too, precisely tuned, grouped into families. That whole process started way back in those ancient and classical times.
With all that incredible history, it makes you wonder, does music truly transcend language? Can it speak to everyone, regardless of what tongue they speak?
That's a fascinating paradox. The answer seems to be, well, yes and no.
Okay, how so?
On one hand, it absolutely can transcend spoken language. You can be deeply moved by, say, a Mongolian throat song or a complex Indian raga or a blistering jazz solo without understanding a single word of the culture or the specific context.
Yeah, I felt that.
Infants respond to lullabies across totally different cultures, and emotions like sadness, joy, fear, they're conveyed so powerfully, often without any lyrics at all.
But on the other hand, it's still very much shaped by culture, isn't it? Like what sounds happy to me might sound, melancholic to someone else.
Exactly right. What sounds happy or sad can differ greatly depending on your cultural background. The scales used, the instruments, the rhythmic norms, they vary hugely across the globe. So music is a language of its own, you could say. Not universal in the sense that everyone understands every single detail, but definitely interpretable and deeply communicative across boundaries.
It's clear music isn't just notes then. It's this incredibly powerful force. But why? Why does it get under our skin so much? What's actually happening in our brains when we hear that perfect chord or that driving beat?
You're hitting on something key there. Music taps right into the limbic structures in the brain, those deep kind of primal parts tied directly to our emotions, memory, and the reward system. That's why it can evoke such strong feelings and unlock vivid memories. Beyond the brain itself, it bonds communities. Think tribal dances, national anthems, creates those powerful shared experiences.
Right, like at a concert or festival.
Exactly. It also powerfully reflects and shapes identity, whether it's through protest songs, heartfelt love ballads, or ancient religious chants. And uniquely, really, among all art forms, it plays with time. You don't just observe music, you feel time passing as you experience it unfolding.
That's a great point.
So when we sum it all up, music is older than writing, very likely older than structured language itself, possibly one of the earliest forms of human self-expression. From those primal rhythms to complex symphonies, it's always danced right at the edge of mystery and meaning. It can be mapped and measured, sure, but as the insights point out, it can never be fully tamed.
And that untamable nature leads us right to another fundamental question. Is music, or maybe any art for that matter, ultimately subjective? Yeah, you hear people say, of course it is. What I love, my friend hates.
It certainly feels that way a lot of the time, doesn't it? What one person calls beautiful, another might just dismiss as noise.
Exactly.
And you're right, it is subjective in the sense that meaning, beauty, legitimacy, they often lie in the eye or maybe the ear of the beholder. What one person calls music, another may indeed call noise. What moves one soul might leave another completely cold.
But then, there's that common thread, isn't there? That shared experience that seems to transcend individual tastes sometimes, like a universal rhythm or something.
And that's the no part of the answer, I think. There's underlying structure, there's deep tradition, there's shared human experience. Across time and cultures, humans have converged on certain patterns like rhythm, repetition, symmetry that seem to reliably evoke emotion in us.
Interesting.
So music is subjective, definitely, but it's not random. It floats in that fascinating space between chaos and order, doesn't it? Between intention and reception.
If that's the case, then who or what actually gets to make music? Can non-humans or even artificial intelligence create art or music? Let's start with birds. They sing complex songs.
They do. Many birds produce incredibly structured songs, mostly for mating or territorial functions. Some, like the Australian lyrebird, are astonishing mimics. They can reproduce sounds from chainsaws to car alarms with stunning fidelity.
Wow.
So the core question for us becomes, is it just biological signaling, purely instinctual? Or is there an element of, let's say, proto-musicality there? Some researchers actually argue that certain birds do improvise and even duet, which starts to sound a lot like human musical collaboration, doesn't it?
It does. What about elephants? I've seen those videos of elephants painting. Is that art in the same way human painting is?
The painting elephants. They've indeed been observed painting with brushes, often with human guidance, it's true. The debate here really centers on whether they're expressing something truly internal, an aesthetic choice, or simply responding to trained behavior patterns.
So we don't really know their intent.
Exactly. Some argue they show preferences for color, shape, gesture, but it's still debated whether that reflects genuine aesthetic choice or just pattern reinforcement. If art truly requires intent from the creator, then animal art remains a bit of a gray zone. But if art is defined by perception, if you, the viewer or listener, see meaning in beauty, then maybe a bird's song can be beautiful and emotionally evocative regardless of what the bird intended.
That's a cool way to think about it. Okay, what about plants? Can they create art or music? That sounds pretty out there.
Well, yeah, it does. Plants obviously don't intentionally produce sound or visuals like we do, but they certainly change color, shape, and rhythmically bloom in ways humans interpret as beautiful, right? A flower opening is a kind of performance.
True.
And there are studies where plants seem to respond to sound frequencies, though this doesn't mean they hear like us. What's really intriguing now are these art installations using plant biofeedback.
How's that work?
They use sensors to translate the plant's subtle electrical signals into MIDI data, essentially converting their internal impulses into musical instructions that software can understand and turn into sound.
Whoa.
It makes you wonder, who is truly making the music in that scenario? The plant, the artist who set up the system, or you, the listener, who perceives it as music?
Okay, this brings us to what feels like the thorniest territory of all, artificial intelligence. Can AI truly create music?
We're seeing it happen right now, aren't we? With platforms like Suno, AIVA, Amper, AI can compose melodies, harmonize, simulate instruments, mimic existing styles, even evoke quite profound emotion in the listener.
Yeah, some of it sounds incredibly real.
It does. Many AI-generated tracks can easily pass as real music made by humans.
But here's the paradox that always comes up for me. AI doesn't feel anything. It doesn't have love or grief or a desire for rebellion driving it.
Precisely. That's the core issue. An AI doesn't create music for love or healing or rebellion or transcendence because it fundamentally lacks that human intent and lived experience. However, we, the listeners, often supply both the intent and the experience when we interpret what it creates.
So we complete the circuit, in a way.
You could say that. So is AI music art? Many would argue yes, if it's received as art and resonates emotionally with someone. Others firmly argue that true art needs a soul, a human creator who means something by it. Maybe AI's creations are best thought of as, I don't know, mirrors for human imagination, echo chambers for our own dreams, values, and desires.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So if we take this big picture view, what is art then, including music? Is it a thing or something else entirely?
The source material leans towards this idea that art might not be a thing at all, but rather a relationship.
A relationship.
Yeah, between intention and interpretation,
Wow.
between structure and emotion, between the creator or the apparent creator, like AI or a plant, and the receiver, you. So whether it's a bird's song, an elephant's painting, a plant's subtle bloom, or an AI's killer beat drop, if it moves us, makes us reflect, or changes how we feel, it lives in that expansive realm of art. Music isn't just what we hear, it's what we recognize in the hearing.
I love that. What we recognize in the hearing. It leads us perfectly to our next big question. What exactly is a song? At its simplest, you might say, okay, it's a musical composition intended to be sung. Traditionally implies melody, lyrics, rhythm.
But the boundaries get incredibly blurry, fast. Think about it. Some songs have absolutely no lyrics, right? Instrumentals. Some have no distinct melody, think spoken word pieces over beat or certain kinds of chanting. And some are essentially collages of sound, like a lot of experimental or ambient music.
So the simple definition doesn't quite cut it.
Not really. A better working definition might be something like a crafted, time-based work of sound, typically with rhythm and pattern, that conveys mood, meaning, or emotion, often with the human voice as a central element. But even that has exceptions.
And when you think about it, creating a song today, wow, it can involve such a huge range of different skill sets. It's not just about one thing anymore, is it? It's totally modular.
You're absolutely right. It's completely modular now. So many potential ingredients. First, you have vocal skill, right? Things like pitch control, phrasing, vibrato, breath control. Genres like opera, soul, R&B really prioritize this.
Even auto-tune fits in there now as a tool.
Definitely. It can be an intentional aesthetic choice, not just a fix, though people argue about that. Then there's instrumental performance. That demands dexterity, precise timing, ear training. Whether you're talking about a classical guitarist, a jazz trumpet player, or someone programming a complex trap drum machine pattern. And playing together, ensemble performance adds that whole other layer of group synergy.
And of course, the words themselves, lyric writing.
Yeah, that's a whole art. A mix of poetry, storytelling, meter, rhyme, folk, rap, singer-songwriter genres really showcase the power of words. It demands emotional awareness, cultural literacy, too.
Then there's the tech side, which is huge now.
Immense production and technology, programming synths, mastering digital audio workstations, debobias, beat making, mixing, mastering. Entire genres like EDM, hip-hop, hyperpop thrive here. And a one-person band can literally do everything on a laptop now.
It's incredible. And then there's the big picture, like the architecture of the sound.
That's arrangement and composition. Deciding when and how different sounds appear, structuring a verse-chorus, creating harmony and tension, building dynamics. Think about a sweeping film score, complex jazz arrangements, or even just the subtle transitions within a trap beat. It truly requires an understanding of musical storytelling. Finally, maybe the most subtle one, cultural awareness. Knowing what your audience expects or deliberately subverting it, tapping into aesthetic trends, emotional resonance, or the socio-political context. This is especially relevant in pop music, protest songs, and all those genre-bending fusions we hear.
Each of these aspects continually redefines what a song can be. Some genres value technical prowess, others reward innovation, authenticity, pure emotion. Which often leads to some pretty heated debates, doesn't it? You hear people say, is this even a song? All the time.
Oh, absolutely. People argue about this constantly, especially when new songs challenge tradition. They might dismiss computer noise as not real music, or they challenge the effort involved, saying anyone could do that, it's just a loop.
Right, or authenticity. She didn't even write it herself.
Exactly. And of course, skill visibility gets questioned with comments like, auto-tuned vocals and AI beats, that's just cheating.
But the real question underneath all that defensiveness is deeper, isn't it? It's about what we truly value in art itself.
Exactly. What is it we're looking for? Is it effort, technical skill, raw emotion, novelty, honesty, cultural impact?
Yeah.
A 3-minute classical area and a 1-minute TikTok loop might both be called songs, but they come from wildly different ecosystems with vastly different rules and values.
So a song isn't just one thing.
Not at all. It's a form, a process, a container for so many kinds of creativity. Some are these towering achievements of skill, others are like lightning strikes of pure emotion. Some are made in huge, expensive studios, others on a simple laptop in a bedroom. So maybe a more interesting question than is it a song is, what kind of song is this, and what kind of labor, what kind of intention, what kind of meaning brought it into existence?
Okay, let's explore some of those boundaries then.
Yeah.
What about instrumental-only songs? No voice, no words at all. Are they truly songs?
They absolutely are, in my view, and in the view of our sources. Instrumental pieces offer pure musical expression through melody, harmony, rhythm, texture, dynamics, all the musical building blocks. They can evoke incredibly powerful emotions without saying a single word.
Like a film score or classical music.
Exactly. The profound grief you might feel from a cello solo, or the sheer triumph in a stirring film score. Examples are everywhere. Classical symphonies, intricate jazz instrumentals, those chill vibes of lo-fi tracks, or a blistering guitar solo. These pieces feel like songs because they move through time with a structured, often deeply emotional arc. They maintain a distinct musical identity even without vocals.
Okay. And on the other end of the spectrum, what about a cappella or maybe body-only songs? No instruments at all, just voices and bodies making sound.
These powerfully center the human voice and body as the primary instrument. They can be incredibly lush and layered with intricate harmonies, rhythm, vocal textures like beatboxing or vocal bass lines, and they tap right back into our primal roots, don't they? Echoing the chanting, clapping, stomping that were likely humanity's very first song.
Yeah, you can really feel that connection sometimes.
Think of classic barbershop quartets or modern vocal ensembles like pentatonics or ancient indigenous body percussion rituals. These feel like music because of their clear intent, their distinct form, their sonic design, not because of what they include or exclude. The human voice is just astonishingly versatile.
So neither approach is more of a song than the other. They're just different tools, different canvases for expression.
Precisely. They're equally valid forms of song, just emphasizing different sets of tools. While instrumental-only pieces offer an almost unlimited palette of sounds and textures from all kinds of sources, a cappella, though maybe constrained by vocal range, is endlessly creative within those bounds. Their cultural roots often differ too. Instrumentals may be linked more to formal training sometimes. A cappella often growing from oral tradition and community gatherings.
This brings us to another traditional expectation. Does a song need all the elements? Like melody, rhythm, structure, lyrics, harmony, timbre, emotional impact, to truly be a song? That whole checklist.
Not at all, actually. Many pieces widely considered songs don't have all those things. Ambient pieces, for instance, might intentionally lack a clear melody or a traditional rhythm. Minimalist music can feel almost formless in the conventional sense. Drum circles might lack melody or lyrics entirely. Some experimental vocal music might have no discernible pitch or traditional harmony.
So a checklist isn't the final word.
No. The conclusion seems to be that a song is not defined by what's present in a strict checklist, but by the relationship of sound and time that ultimately evokes a meaningful or musical experience for someone. The real magic might not lie in its ingredients, but in its intention, and crucially, its perception by you, the listener. If someone says, "This is my song," and a listener agrees, feels something, then for that experience, it becomes one, whether it's whistled, hummed, or clicked into a data value.
Okay, another common question is about length. Does a song need to be a certain duration to qualify? Is that quick jingle on TV really a song or a TikTok sound?
Short answer, no. Length doesn't disqualify something, but it certainly influences how we categorize and interpret it. Think about those really short songs, under 30 seconds maybe. Commercial jingles, TV show intros, those viral TikTok clips.
Yeah.
Yes, these are absolutely songs if they contain some kind of musical structure or a distinct identity. A jingle is brief, sure, but if it sticks in your head and conjures a feeling or a brand, it's functioning as a song. A song is not a measure of time, but of musical completeness, however brief.
So that standard 2 to 5 minute song length we all kind of expect,
Yeah.
where did that come from then? It feels so baked in.
That range really became the norm, mostly due to, well, old technology, physical limitations of early media, like 78 RPM records, which can only hold about 3 minutes per side.
Ah, okay.
Then radio formatting naturally favored a quick, digestible content to keep listeners engaged between ads. And today, yeah, streaming algorithms often reward replayability within that length. But it's fundamentally a market norm, not a musical law.
What about really long songs then, over 7 or 10 minutes? like those epic classical movements or long prog rock tracks or extended jazz improvisations.
Yes, these are still songs, absolutely. But they often expand and shift into other forms. Maybe we call them suites or symphonies or vast soundscapes. The key difference is how we experience them. Long pieces demand more attention, immersion, a certain endurance from the listener. They often deliberately resist those traditional pop structures.
Like that John Cage piece you mentioned,
Yeah.
the really, really long one.
Exactly. As slow as possible. Still being performed, scheduled to take 639 years to finish. That's an extreme, of course, but it highlights the point that length is relative.
So what matters more than just the clock time in defining a song?
It really comes down to a few other things. Is there a clear structure, some kind of musical arc or progression, even if it's unconventional? Is there clear intention? Was it crafted specifically to be music? How is its reception? Do listeners treat it as a self-contained, meaningful piece? And does it have a distinct identity? Can it be recognized or remembered on its own? So the conclusion is, there is no length requirement for a song. A 5-second loop, a 2-minute pop hit, and a 60-minute ambient drone can all be songs if they create a meaningful musical experience for you. A song isn't how long it is, it's maybe how long it lasts in your memory.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, next up, this elusive concept of quality in music. Does it even matter? You hear so many arguments about what's good or bad music. It feels like constant warfare sometimes.
Yeah, it really does. And again, it's kind of a yes and no situation. It depends entirely on who's doing the judging. Is it a professional critic, a devoted fan, a record producer looking for a hit? It depends on what's being valued. Are we talking about lyrical depth, a particular vibe, emotional punch, groundbreaking originality?
Good factors.
Exactly. And crucially, it depends on where it's heard. A packed club demands something different from a somber funeral or a passionate protest rally. While technical quality, good recording, skilled playing can certainly enhance a song and maybe contribute to its longevity, it's not strictly required for a song to work, especially today. Things are so blended, attention is so fragmented.
Well, so lyrics, for example. We see everything from incredibly poetic mastery to stuff that might seem, well, incoherent or mumbled. Does that all count as quality lyricism in some way?
You see this huge spectrum, right? Poetic and rhythmic lyrics clearly show craft and intention, but then incoherent or mumbled lines can create a very specific vibe or emotional texture. Think dream pop or some styles of mumble rap.
Right, it's part of the sound.
Exactly. Fragmented or jarring lyrics can feel raw, experimental, or perfectly capture a certain state of mind. Conversational or plain-spoken lyrics can feel incredibly relatable and direct. What our sources highlight is that different genres prize different things. In some, coherence and rhyme are paramount. In others, the overall feeling or sonic texture takes precedence over crystal clarity.
So it's not automatically bad if lyrics don't rhyme or make traditional logical sense?
Not necessarily, no. Think about artists like Bob Dylan, who often use surreal collage-style lyrics that defy easy narrative but still feel incredibly profound. Kurt Cobain famously admitted many Nirvana lyrics were chosen more for their sound than their literal meaning.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Mumble rap often prioritizes rhythm, melody, and texture over verbal clarity. And ambient or experimental artists frequently skip lyrics entirely or use the voice purely as a textural sound design element, not for direct communication. A lyric doesn't have to make logical sense to feel right, you know? Music communicates emotion first, logic second. If that emotion lands with you, the specific craft of the lyrics becomes incredibly flexible.
This brings us right to the paradox of quality. We can sit here and break down high-quality traits versus low-quality traits across lyrics, vocals, instrumentation, production, structure. But then you have these songs that seem to break all the supposed rules and still become massive hits or enduring classics. How does that happen?
That's the wild thing about art, isn't it? Songs that might be considered low quality by some conventional metrics, maybe jarring lyrics, maybe slightly off-key vocals, maybe an overly repetitive structure, can still resonate incredibly deeply and become classics. Why? Because of context. The cultural moment they land in, precise timing, a strong sense of identity, raw emotion, or even just sheer repetition making them familiar.
So connection trumps technical perfection sometimes.
Often. If a listener truly connects, technical quality can sometimes become secondary to the overall impact. So, does quality matter? Yes, if you're aiming for widespread artistic respect or longevity in the classical sense, perhaps. But also know if you're just aiming to move someone, capture a fleeting moment, or authentically reflect a specific subculture or feeling. A song doesn't need to be good by everyone's metric to be real, and it certainly doesn't need to be polished to be powerful.
So instead of just asking if a song is good or bad, maybe we should be asking a different kind of question.
A better question might be, what is this song trying to do, and does it succeed on its own terms for its intended purpose or audience?
That's a more productive way to frame it. And it helps us understand why we get so divisive about music and art in general. One big reason, and you might feel this yourself, is how much we tie our own identity to our taste.
It's so true. People often deeply wrap their sense of self up in their musical taste. So when someone attacks their favorite genre or artist, it can genuinely feel like a personal attack on them.
Yeah, I get that.
This links directly to cultural gatekeeping, too. Some people feel this intense need to defend tradition, establish skill, or perceived authenticity from what they see as, dilution, commercialization, or a lack of true artistry. Others might want to protect marginalized artistic spaces from being co-opted or misunderstood by outsiders.
And new things can be quite unsettling, can't they? Especially when technology gets involved, like we were saying with AI.
Absolutely. There's often a natural fear of change. As styles evolve and new technologies emerge, like AI generating music or the widespread use of auto-tune, people worry about a loss of soul or meaning or genuine human effort in the arts. New genres can feel threatening to the old hierarchies of what's considered valid music.
And there's that tension between skill and accessibility.
Yeah, that constant tension between elitism and accessibility. Some critics seem to conflate technical skill with intrinsic value, ignoring emotional resonance or groundbreaking innovation. Others might swing the other way and dismiss skill altogether as snobbery, overcorrecting toward pure minimalism or just disruptive sounds.
So when is criticism of music or art actually warranted? When is it more than just someone saying, well, I don't like it?
I think criticism is more warranted when it's rooted in legitimate concerns that go beyond personal taste. For example, if it's about cultural appropriation, an artist profiting from a sound deeply rooted in another culture without honoring its origins or giving credit.
Okay.
Or false representation, like we talked about, an AI-generated track being deliberately passed off as handmade by a human. It's also warranted for misuse of power, maybe a record label pushing generic content just because it's algorithm-friendly, ignoring real artistry. Or the erasure of craft, where years of mastery get overshadowed by cheap novelty gimmicks. These critiques aren't just about personal taste. They delve into context, ethics, and the broader impact of the art.
And when is criticism not warranted? When does it cross the line into just pure gatekeeping?
Criticism becomes invalid, or even toxic, when it's based purely on personal taste, but phrased as objective fact, that's not real music because I don't like it. Or when it's fundamentally about excluding new voices or technology, like saying, if it's not played on a real instrument by a human, it doesn't count.
Right.
Mocking sincere artistic expression just because it's different. Or that kind of defensive elitism claiming only those who study music theory for years should be allowed to make music. Those are also examples. In these cases, the critic often isn't protecting music itself, they're protecting their own status or their own narrow definition within it.
So for you, our listener, listening to this, how can you best evaluate a critique of music or art that you encounter out there? Is there a way to sort the useful from the just plain noisy?
Maybe a good checklist to run through mentally could be: first, is this critique about taste or ethics? Taste is subjective. Ethical concerns about fairness and context are different. Second, is the criticism informed or just reactionary? Does the person actually understand what they're criticizing?
Good point.
Third, is there room for dialogue or only dismissal? Can they say, it's not for me, instead of definitively declaring it's not music? Fourth, is it about inclusion or exclusion? Does it protect access to art or try to restrict it to a chosen few? And finally, is it addressing the artist's intention and the art's impact, or just focusing narrowly on the technique used to create it? Remember, art is often much more than just how it's made. It's why it's made and what it does for us.
That's really helpful. Ultimately, art isn't sacred because it's perfect, is it?
Maybe.
It's sacred because it's human, or at least because it connects with humans.
Exactly. And music itself is just far too wide, too wild, too personal to be reduced to one single narrow definition. It resists easy answers.
So, Mady, the final thought for you is this. Gatekeeping sometimes guards a legacy worth protecting, a tradition or a skill that's fair enough. But often, it just builds walls around fear. So the next time someone says, that's not music, maybe just take a moment and ask yourself, who gets to decide? What are they really trying to protect? And perhaps most importantly, what might we all lose if we stop listening?